This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Hello and welcome to Tracks from the Edge, Trek FM show in which we take a look at each episode of Star Trek and provide audio commentary for them, at least the new
Nailed
ones.
it.
Yeah, close. I'm Mike.
I'm Max.
And today we're going to be providing audio commentary for Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 9, Project Daedalus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I pronounce Daedalus because I've been pronouncing like that before I heard anyone say it out loud.
Well, there you go.
And I'm not entirely sure I'm wrong, so whatever.
Okay.
Come at me, ancient Greeks.
Yep. So before we get into this, just a little bit of behind-the-scenes news for the new Picard show.
Picard show.
Yeah, it's been revealed that the cinematographer of at least some of the episodes is going to be Philip Lanyon, who has done a number of little things, but most notably, probably to anyone listening to this, he photographed The Sound of Thunder and the brightest star, so the Kelpian things. And it's kind of interesting because I would say we're not tremendously big fans of The Sound of Thunder, and it was weird because a lot of people online loved it, but if you go back and listen to that commentary, the one thing that we talk about for a decent amount of time is how good the episode looks and how well photographed it is, and the lighting and everything like that. And it was weird because going back and looking at some of the comments, a lot of them were, "Oh, I really liked that episode, but boy, I really hated the way it was shot." So we were just the complete opposite on that. So to me, this is good news. To Twitter, maybe not so good news. I don't know. Whatever. But yes, I'm excited.
Here's the thing.
Seems
if
good.
Twitter is unhappy, that's a day that ends in Y. That's not news. Twitter's always angry. Twitter is primarily a fury engine.
Yeah. So anyway, Philip Lanyon, he's the cinematographer on this show. So if you want to see what the Picard show will look like, go take a look at The Sound of Thunder, I guess. I don't know.
Yep, there's going to be a lot of Kelpians. It's going to be mostly outdoors. There's going to be oil monsters. Lots of stuff like that. That's what it's going to look like.
Yeah. All right. Should we move on to this week's episode?
Oh my God, of course. Let's do it.
Project Daedalus.
Yeah.
Okay. We are going to start this right after the CBS All Access logo or the Netflix logo or whatever else logo cuts to black. So approximately 8 seconds in on the American version. And Max, if you're ready,
yeah,
we will start this up in 3, 2, 1, start. Previously on Star Trek Discovery.
There was a big circle. And Saru was like, "What is going on?" And Stamets was like, "There's some stuff happening." And then there was a squid, and then Tilly said some nonsense. And then Arium got infected by a virus from the future. It's all kinds of nonsense.
Yep. So, this episode seems to be rather polarizing for
What?
I know it's weird.
Wait, what? Star Trek Discovery has conflicting views in the fan base?
It's kind of strange. I know,
I don't get it.
It's bizarre.
I thought it was pretty by the numbers.
Well, these were the two things which I saw online from numerous individuals. One was, oh, it's so great that they really gave a solid backstory to Arium, and it was really, really sad when she died. Spoilers. And the other thing, which I've seen rather frequently, is, boy, they really crammed all of Arium's backstory into one single episode just to kill her so that we would feel something when she died.
Yep.
That feels like a cheat.
Yeah.
And I would say that I fall in the middle.
Yeah,
I was I was watching the episode, I was like, boy, they're really cramming all of this stuff in here. It's kind of sad when she dies. But ultimately, I don't have a strong feeling about any of it. And upon further reflection, I think about like at first I was like, oh man, because like as soon as they start doing the backstory, I'm like, oh, she's totally going to die in this episode. She is dead. That is us seeing a flashback to her before she was a robot is a death sentence right there. Yes. She's dead. Okay, so the whole time I'm thinking like, boy,
it's. I agree.
But at the same time, and at first I kind of felt like, oh, that's a cheat. That's a cheat. They're just trying to, But then I started thinking about like,
oh my God, how many phases of this process were there?
It's been a few days. It's been, back and forth and whatever. I started thinking about like other shows or whatever, comic books or whatever, where they have like these sidebar stories where it's like, oh, that person who, we didn't care about forever. Now all of a sudden we get to see their backstory, and it's kind of cool because it fleshes out the world. And I mean, you could take that to various degrees. I mean, they did that on Westworld, and they did that. I'm thinking like Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man on X-Files, yep. Or even Lower Decks on Next Gen. Like any of these things. And every time that's been done, I've been like, oh, that was really cool. I like that, And it's not the exact same thing there, but
no.
And here's the other thing about it, which I think is kind of skewing the reaction a little bit. If this were Next Gen, where everything is a standalone episode and where we're used to a character being introduced and not seeing them again the following week, nobody would think anything of it. But the fact that we've entered this new era of continuity-driven storylines and everything, we feel like it should be built up over time. And when it's not, it feels disappointing. Anyway, that was sort of my big info dump in the vein of the info dump of Arium's backstory that we see in this episode. So I'm on topic. I don't know.
Okay, so let me see if I've got this. You started by thinking, oh, I agree with the one side. And then you were like, I kind of also agree with the other side. And then you went through an incredibly long series of thoughts and came to the conclusion that I don't really think I'm on either side.
Yeah, I basically just don't care.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I am on both sides.
Okay.
When people are like, oh, like we finally got some backstory on Arium, I'm like, yeah, that's good. And it was tragic that she died. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. And they're like, oh, it's kind of cheap that they like dumped all this backstory into her character, really, just so that like when she died at the end of the episode, it'd be more significant. And I'm like, yeah, that's also true. And my feeling is like, it is kind of a bummer that TV shows do this on a regular basis. And It's something that you see on like heavily serialized shows, more serialized than this even, like The Walking Dead. When a character has a flashback, that person's dead within 40 minutes. Like, that's a thing. And it's part of the format of television now that when a character has any sort of like closure, they're in peril.
Yeah.
From a show running perspective.
And you know that's actually like something which ended up not happening on Walking Dead, but which I thought was sort of like a perfect example of this, where I'm like, oh, that would have been so cool. Apparently, like in season 1 of that show, there's a scene where there's like they find like a dead body in a room or something, and people kind of took note of the fact that the dead body, which was just lying in the corner, was an established actor, right? And people were like, that's really weird. Like, they just cast like a legit actor to lie in a corner dead. That seems
they
like
got Dennis Haysbert to just be there in the room as a corpse.
That's weird. And then,
it's kind of weird that Bradley Cooper just showed up to play a zombie in one shot of that show's pilot.
I mean, that's the type of thing. And and it's like, well, what was the deal there? And it was revealed later on that, Frank Darabont... They
got Bill Pullman in for that day.
Yeah, Frank Darabont, who at the time was running the show but was then fired. He had a plan to do like a sidebar story where you find out how that guy
that Jim Carrey died in that hospital in that episode.
I don't know what you're doing, but it's not working, so whatever.
I'm proving that you don't even remember the name of the actor that this story is about.
I've never even seen the episode. No, it's not a known actor. It's not someone who you're like, oh, yeah. That's Harrison Ford. No, it was just like a guy who people were like, well, he's been in a lot of TV shows. Like, I recognize that guy,
Yeah, let's keep talking about The Walking Dead. That's fun.
Okay. All right. Anyway, the idea is like they had that planned out, and that would have been a cool thing. And that's kind of like what they're doing here. It's sort of, reverse engineered. It doesn't matter. Anyway.
Yeah, this is what you do in TV shows when a character is going to die. It's part of the format. It's how you do it. You don't have a character that's been on the show since the beginning die without giving them some sort of significance. So sometimes you have to load that significance in at the very end, which is unfortunate. And the thing about death is that's usually when you learn things about people. Like you find out like that like your uncle like had a weird part of his life where he was in the military and then he left, and you're like, I didn't even know that until he died. That's the kind of thing that happens when big significant events occur. So part of this thing is like when something transformative occurs, you learn a lot of information. And I think that's what we're seeing. Like this episode was built by the events of its future, much like the plot of this season is shaped primarily by the events of the future.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is true in sort of like a meta level, but it's not true from like a story standpoint, because it's not like all these people are saying like, oh man, Arium was so great. Remember that time, like, and actually that is an interesting thing, which they could have theoretically done, because like, if you look at like the preview for next week's episode, like obviously they're, that they have like, the burial at sea kind of thing going on and everything like that. And it's clear that everyone is sort of like affected by her death. Like they could have done, and who knows, maybe they still will, an episode where like all of this backstory is given in the episode after she dies, where I'm just saying it's something that they could have done, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyway, hey, something of note in these credits here, the episode was directed by Jonathan Frakes, because if you need to introduce a robot and kill them in the end of the episode, and make people feel really sad about that, apparently he's the go-to director in Star Trek. But also, it's written by Michelle Paradise, who has just been announced as the showrunner for season 3.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Anyway, Okay. So here we're seeing all of this stuff and all of these memories, and she's deleting and uploading. And hey, I mean, this seems like maybe it's the tie to the Discovery becoming sentient in that short trek, since she dumps all of her memories into Discovery.
Yeah, I mean, like there are a lot of things that you could try to like connect up the dots and everything, because there's a lot of potential future developments, and that Calypso thing really like it was a giant like crazy series of things that are like laid right before this season began. We were like, wait, so the Discovery is adrift for 1,000 years? That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like that means that like not only was the Discovery not destroyed, it was also not decommissioned, it was not retired, it was left waiting for 1,000 years. That means some weird stuff went down. So that's a whole lot of information to lay, and then not do anything with it would be pretty weird.
Yeah.
So we're looking for clues on what caused that. But like,
did you see Solo: A Star Wars Story yet?
of course not. I have no interest in that movie. I see it in Netflix all the time, and every time I'm like, I love that I'm not watching that. It feels so great to not have to spend time watching that.
All right, fair enough.
The best.
Yeah, because there's a similar plot line in that.
It's like when I stopped watching Enterprise, and I was like, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
Like an episode would air, and I'm like, I'm not watching it. It's great.
Well, regardless, there's a very similar plot line to what could potentially be going on here in Solo: A Star Wars Story. So there you go.
Sure. Yeah. What I think here is that Star Trek for the first time is really dealing with like what it means to have like AI amongst them, because they've always had it, but they've never really addressed it like in any real way. Like what it means to have like been dealing with this all the time. Like, I mean, they dealt with it on Voyager, but it's like, how did you not figure this out before this happened? Like, you have AI just sitting around doing stuff. Of course, you're going to have to deal with the question of whether or not it can become a personality and an identity and like a living being that has agency. Like, for the first time they're dealing with it in Star Trek in the past, which I find very strange.
I mean, Next Gen, with Data, right?
Data did it, but they had that they wrapped it up in this little box of like Noonien Soong figured it out and he's dead.
Okay.
We can't replicate it. Like this one guy has an idea that he might be able to replicate it, but it might kill Data. So then they had a whole episode about it, and Jonathan Frakes prevented that from happening. So like that's a weird reference to season 2 of Next Gen, and most people skip that because they know that it's probably the best way to do. But like, it's a thing. So Star Trek dealing with it in the past with like AIs and like Section 31, for some reason, the AI that's like dictating like Federation, like Starfleet decisions is in the Section 31 headquarters. What? That doesn't make any sense. That's ridiculous. And okay, fine, whatever. It becomes sentient. Fine. Okay, so it destroys all life. Okay, so we're just doing the Terminator. Is that what it is? We're just doing Terminator now?
It's an interesting thought. I hadn't considered that.
You hadn't considered that this is just Terminator?
I guess because when you think of Terminator, you're thinking of something on a much smaller scale, whereas this is talking about, like...
Okay, well, this is a lens into my mind versus your mind. You think of what happens in Terminator, and I think of Skynet in the future decides to preserve its own existence by changing the past? What? Why does that work? How does that even make sense?
Okay. All right.
You can't preserve your own existence by changing the past. It doesn't make sense.
So this is the scene.
I've got a rationalization for it, but don't worry about it. That'll come up later.
Okay, fair enough. So this is the scene where Tilly says "robot," which I love so much because, like, anytime you watch, like, basically any sci-fi show prior to the original series,
it It comes up in the original series.
Does it come up there too? Yeah,
It does.
People say robot, and it's like, yeah, well, in the future timeline, just like they had like 70s haircuts in episode 3, like at this point in the history of the future, they should be saying robot. I don't know. I just love that.
Well, I mean, like in a lot of ways, Star Trek predicted the future, and I think in some ways, like it really nailed it. Like the early 21st century, there's a World War III, and a lot of things go back a lot of the ways, so we can justify a lot of reversions to previous linguistic quirks.
Yeah.
So I could see Robot making a comeback.
I mean, maybe she just likes to pronounce it. Maybe she's just a really big fan of the Twilight Zone, and
maybe she's just like me and just likes saying things weird. Like
that could be too.
Just has fun just saying things in a slightly strange way.
Yeah, I kind of think that's what it is.
Yeah,
but so this is an interesting little scene where Admiral Cornwell describes or says why Enterprise was left out of the war. It's interesting.
It's great. It's a super good explanation. It's like, oh yeah, the reason you were left out of the war, the reason we left out the best is because we thought we might lose. We thought we might want to keep the best around. That's the kind of thing you say when that seems like such nonsense. That seems like just a straight up lie. Like it's the kind of thing you say to somebody when you're like, okay, I got to really flatter this person because I am caught in a bad situation and I need to make this person feel great so that they are not as angry with me. So, baby, you're the best. I was always coming back. It's not about you. It was a personal thing with me. Like I didn't want to get you involved. That's the kind of nonsense you say to somebody when you are lying to them.
Could be. So
this is the scene where Spock and Michael have a fight. And after this scene, like my feeling was everything Spock said was very nice. He just said it in an angry way.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like I don't quite get why it was like scored and shot like it was like the most aggressive attack, because he basically said like, I think you're being overly hard on yourself and you should really cut yourself a break because honestly, get real. You've done pretty well for a person who's gone through so much trauma.
But the way that he said it was like, you are so full of yourself to think that this is all your fault.
Yes. Yes. He said it in an aggressive way, but everything he said was very nice. He was telling her that she is okay, that she is a flawed human, much like he is. She and he both have flaws, and their imperfections make them do stupid things and think stupid things. But at the end of the day, ultimately, they're both pretty great. And I came out of that scene like, oh, so I guess Spock is all right.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I have a problem with this. I have a problem with this. Okay. Here's the thing. This woman sees Ariam acting very slightly odd.
Uh-huh.
And she's like, oh, I wonder if she's been infected by a virus from the future and is working against us from the inside. I'm going to keep an eye on her, just in case she's been infected by a virus from the future and is working for the enemy on the inside.
See, I see it as being, because she's like the head of security, right?
Sure.
So
but there was a Klingon on the ship for what, months?
Yeah.
She was just like walking around like, oh, he's acting real twitchy all the time.
She wasn't there at that point.
Was she? She wasn't there?
No, because she came over with Kurt, or with Pike, whatever his name is. But that guy
with Cork.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I thought that was really weird. I don't get how she's this attuned to strange behavior.
That's her job, you know?
Fine. Then they really screwed up by not having her on when Tyler was on, because she's apparently able to spot anything
She
shifting.
was on the Enterprise, you know?
Yeah, not involved in the war. Great decision, guys.
Oh. It is weird, though, because, like, this is another episode where both Tyler and Culber are gone. It seems just strange that to have two series regulars who aren't on, like, half the episodes. And here, in particular, like, they talk about Tyler a bunch, and he's sort of an integral part of the plot, but the whole time they're like, well, he's confined to quarters. And at no point is there a scene where it's like, well, we're going to go talk to him, or, you know, he's in his, you know, you usually see that because you usually utilize all your characters. And here they were just like, he's in his quarters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been grounded because we suspect him of treason.
But it's just weird that, you know, we haven't seen him at all.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, like, it's this show. They've got a lot of recurring characters. Like, it doesn't seem like a massive, like, ensemble cast because it's mostly on one ship. But it's actually a pretty big old cast. Like, there are a lot of people who are in a lot of episodes. It's West Wingy, you know? There's a lot of moving parts to this show.
I like the way this scene is shot with the chess and everything like that. The sort of like macro lenses that they use or whatever, and also the sort of like that look, like when they put like the black chess piece on like the illuminated table and there's that red halo. I don't know if this is exactly what it is. I don't really know too much about lenses, but that reminds me a lot of like artifacting that we would see when like the back focus wasn't quite right on an anamorphic lens when we were projecting. I'm assuming it's the same type of thing. I don't know. Anyway, I like it.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. I don't doubt it, though. I was a little annoyed that they didn't give me any insight on how this 3D chess is played, because I've played it before, and I was like, this doesn't seem right. These pieces aren't moving like they moved them on the show.
Yeah, I think it's because it's probably made up. Sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, guys. Like, can't you figure out the rules to this crazy game?
I haven't checked StarTrek.com yet, but I'm sure that chess table is up there already for sale, right? I mean, that's the thing, right?
Yeah, how come you haven't bought two already? That's crazy.
I'll take a look and see.
All right.
Yeah.
So here's the fight where Spock is very nice, and it's totally ridiculous how she reacts to it.
Well, no, I think it's reasonable.
No. She's a grown person who has never thought these things before. Like, there's no social workers or psychologists or trauma counselors that have ever talked to her about like the terrorist attacks that she lived through. Come on, no, I don't buy it. That's ridiculous.
You don't think that maybe as someone who is sort of raised Vulcan that she didn't try to do what Spock ended up doing because, like you were saying, the trauma that she inflicted on him and just shut down and decided not to deal with these things?
I'm sure that she tried, but I don't buy that it would never come up. And that seems to be the implication. Okay, but now, all right, so while this is all happening, the security person is watching Ariam do her shifty sleeper agent stuff where she's sending information to the AI at Section 31. Because the virus from the future sent back through the probe infected her, making her a sleeper agent for the Section 31 AI, which eventually goes on to destroy all sentient life in the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So the AI has been like doing all this for a very long time, and when it sent the probe back in time, it was like, all right, I'm going to help out myself in the past by making a sleeper agent send my past self information.
Okay.
Here's the thing. Why? If it already did that in the previous timeline, if in its timeline this is already a fact that occurred, then that means that the future can't be changed.
Well, I guess there's some assumptions which are being made there. Is it the AI that sent that stuff back? Right? I mean, we don't know.
So that you think that the squid, the sentinel from the future, might not be from the AI in the future?
I'm saying we just don't know, right?
Okay, so a third party sent a probe back in time to make a sleeper agent to send information to the Section 31 evil AI that destroys all life in the galaxy.
I mean, hey.
And the visions from the Red Angel are not of this Section 31 AI creating those probes in the future and destroying all sentient life in the galaxy.
No, I don't think that. Well, I think that's the AI that's doing that, right? I mean, that makes sense.
So you think that the Section 31 AI is uninvolved? Like at this point, it's a separate. It's the Section 31 AI is the third party at this point. You're thinking?
No. I mean, like I think that maybe I just don't know like what happens in the future. Like maybe they gain sentience here.
No. Like either it happens or it doesn't. Like either like the Section 31 AI, like the evil AI destroys all sentient life in the galaxy, or it doesn't. Either it sends the probe back in time or it doesn't. And since it did to itself in the past, why would it do that if it has already succeeded?
All I'm saying is that we're just assuming that that's what happened. And I'm not saying that you're wrong about that, but I'm just saying like maybe it was someone else who sent it back.
All right. Maybe it was, you know what? Maybe it was Harry Mudd.
There you go.
Like maybe a few hundred years into this, like multiple generations of replicants, like way down the line, Harry Mudd has changed so dramatically that like the 700th generation of his replicants are very chill, and they look so different. They can't even be played by Rainn Wilson anymore. They got to be played by like Rod Blow. Yeah. Like they're very chill and very positive and very like in favor of protecting life in the universe. So they're like, you know what? I'm gonna do the past a solid and send a probe back in time to infect a member of the crew with an alien virus that they send AI information to the evil AI. No, it doesn't work no matter what.
Okay. All right. Well, it's quite possible that it won't work, but I'm curious to see what happens.
Guys, it doesn't work. Terminator doesn't work because you have to assume that Skynet is so fundamentally alien and so strange that it's trying to preserve the concept of its own existence, not itself. Because when it changes the past to preserve itself, it's not preserving the itself that is dying at that point. Because they win the war, the humans win, and they send Kyle Reese back in time just to clean up. But it doesn't. What does that change? The future is there. They're in it. It's happened. They can't change what happened. Skynet's dead. The AI in the future is either the AI of this past or the AI of a different past that's been changed by a probe from the future. So whatever you do, you're changing a different future than the one you're in. Unless you're in some sort of nonsense thing where you can change the present day. And why would you even know that it happened?
Yeah.
Let's say you sent a probe back in time. How do you know it worked? It happened in the past that you're in. It didn't happen to you 5 minutes ago when you sent the probe back. It happened hundreds of years ago when it arrived.
No, I know what you mean. It's that fourth dimensional thinking.
Yeah, and I find it frustrating that Back to the Future, by having Marty McFly be the dumbest teenager in the universe, they have made the entire audience as equally as dumb as him.
I mean, Back to the Future totally worked for me until you started explaining it. But
some people, like have those memories of an emotionally unavailable father who says like, you ruined everything, kid, and they think, oh no. Whereas I thought, I guess that's my thing.
I don't know what you're saying, but that's okay.
I like ruining things.
Okay, all right.
I leaned into it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you were tying this into some sort of time travel thing.
No, I'm saying that time travel is a thing that I can use to ruin things.
That's cool. All right.
It's great.
That's fair. All right. So, it was weird in the preview for last week's episode. They really made it seem like this kind of like assault on Section 31 was going to be like the driving,
which is 13 backwards.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but that's
assault on Section 31, assault on Precinct 13.
Gotcha. So I mean, I'm not complaining or anything like that, but it just kind of took me by surprise when this episode was basically about something else entirely.
Yeah,
but yeah. So here we're having a look at the Vulcan, who is the admiral, who's also the logic extremist.
Yeah, I'm a little bummed that this episode hinges on a very weird thing where, once again, Saru's vision saves the day. People have different people, their metabolism changes as they exert themselves, and the AI can generate photorealistic holographic representations of events that never occurred, but it can't figure out how to do the infrared spectrum.
Well, it's just also, I don't know, it's weird because, I mean, I guess we're saying that the cameras which are photographing these events cover more than just the human visual spectrum, right?
Yes,
that's what we're saying.
They also get infrared light, so they're picking up the light generated by heat sources.
I'm curious. Do you think that Saru can see that when he's looking at the monitor, or do you think that he needs to run it through a filter?
I think Saru sees it, but I mean, I imagine that even for Saru, when you're seeing the entire visible light spectrum plus, let's say infrared and let's say ultraviolet, that's a lot of visual information. So it might be hard to tell if what you're seeing is what you think you're seeing is what it actually is, because you've got other information that might be convoluting it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So isolating it might really be necessary in order to confirm the suspicion that something looked off.
Right. Well, I guess the AI is still learning, still thinking like a human.
Yeah, still thinking like a human when it works with many different species on a regular basis.
But not Kelpians, right?
Not Kelpians. There's only one of those.
Yeah.
It's a good thing there's no Geordies around yet, because dude would have spotted that right away.
Yeah. I really like Stamets' gloves in this scene.
I didn't notice his gloves.
I also really like...
Turns out I don't notice anything on extremities.
What's interesting is I saw some interview with Gersha Phillips, the costume designer, and last week we talked about Melissa George's shoes. You did. You talked about them. Okay. They were actually Kanye West shoes, Yeezys. So there you go. Yes.
Well, that's something to mourn.
I like this scene because it shows Spock at his most logical, even when he's being, kind of a jerk, where he's like, come on, dude, I can't do my thing until you get this up and running. And he's like, well, then why don't you help me? And then Spock's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Look, the thing is, I have been in that situation 100% on both sides a lot of times.
Yeah.
And it pretty much always works exactly like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no version of events where the disaster happens that gets in the way of you accomplishing something, and you don't go, what is going on? How do I what you can't handle this? And the person goes like, oh, you could help, and I'm like, all right, I guess I could.
Yep.
That makes sense. It was stupid of me to just complain about it.
Mm-hmm.
What are you gonna do?
Yep. I don't know. Now we're finally getting to see Ethan Peck's portrayal of Spock, and what do you think about it? Not now that we've been able to sort of see like regular Spock over a span of a couple episodes here.
I accept it. You know, I have a hard time accepting it as the same person as Spock in the other, like the original series and the movies and Next Gen. I have no difficulty, like. It's a sort of the same thing with Zachary Quinto. It's like they're not bad at what they're doing. They're just not Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's weird because like with Quinto, like I totally kind of saw whether or not he was, you know, I could see him like channeling Nimoy to some extent. Like Quinto's Spock feels like a young Nimoy in a lot of ways. Whereas this Spock, I mean, again, I don't have any problem with it, and I'm not one to say like, oh, he should be mimicking that other person's performance or whatever. I think that would be a very bad idea. But I don't.
It kind of worked for Carl Urban.
Yeah, well, it worked for him, but that's like the exception to the rule. I think, like, you know, generally speaking, I think that's kind of a bad idea because
it's dicey because you can get into parody territory,
right?
And you can end up like seeing that person not as who they are, but as some kind of weird like caricature of the other one.
Yeah.
And it can be difficult for that character in this new incarnation to feel real.
Right.
So there is a sort of weird little thing where like if you can get just a little bit of the stuff that nobody noticed consciously and channel that, then you can inhabit the character in a way that feels very real while also still being new.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I would say is that like if someone were to say like, oh, you know, kind of like James Bond or Batman, like, oh, there's a new Spock, and here's the person's take on Spock, I'd be like, that's a good take. You know, I think that's solid. But if you were to say like, this is supposed to line up perfectly, I'd be like, I don't think it does, you know? And I don't have a problem with that because I understand how, you know, movies work, but it's just an interesting.
Well, it's the problem that you run into when you have like a franchise that's sort of like really like navel gazing is the perfect term for it because they are sort of obsessed with the point of their own origin. Like this is very much like still kind of wrapped up in like where Star Trek like began at the very beginning. And it's still sort of obsessed with that. And if it wasn't so obsessed with that, we wouldn't have these problems every 10 years.
Maybe.
Because, by the way, it's been 10 years since we had this problem last. So
yeah. Speaking of which, I don't know. I want to do something special for that. So.
Oh, yeah. It's been 10 years.
If you have any ideas, let me know.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe nothing. I was going to do nothing. But, like, loudly.
Oh, well. Do you think
I was
there's a
kind of expecting
reason-
there to be like a body falling right on them, because like it seemed like a very tall space, and it seemed like, bodies floating around, maybe just like back underneath an archway or something before you turn the gravity on.
Mm-hmm. They do that thing where they're like, "Oh, atmosphere's good. Let's take off our helmets."
Immediately.
I think I would just leave mine on. I don't know. That's just me. I don't know. Maybe they're really annoying. Maybe you can't, see anything peripherally or something like that. I don't know. But I think I'd probably be like, let me just leave these on, because yeah, those bodies are frozen and everything, but they still might smell bad and stuff, right? I'm just thinking.
Well, not immediately. It'll be a little while.
I'm just saying, like, there are a million reasons why I would probably leave those helmets on.
Like, for one thing, like even if like they're all like frozen and not decaying, like if you brushed up against like a chunk of somebody's frozen skull, you'd be like, gross.
Yeah. No, whatever.
I mean, you don't want to get like chunks of like corpse in your hair.
Yeah.
That would be a bummer.
Yep.
Yep. So the AI, it missed this part of the spectrum.
It's still learning, man.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. That's
It
the
needs
whole thing.
information from the future so that it knows to cover the whole spectrum that the video device is recording the holograms on.
Yeah.
No, I don't buy it. It thought of a lot of stuff, guys. It came up with a lot of stuff to cover its tracks. It didn't come up with that.
It's an interesting concept just in general. The idea that, like, they have this computer which is so super smart that basically whenever there's some really, really important decision, the admirals of Starfleet ask the computer, like, what do you think? And then the computer gives a recommendation, and then they're like, let's go with that or let's not. I don't know. It's just, like, at what point, and, like, I can see, like, the logic extremists going, like, clearly, like, that's what Moneyball is about, right? Like, trust the numbers, do what the computer tells you to do. That instinct is a weakness or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's primarily what Moneyball is about. It's about how AI will destroy all life in the galaxy.
Yeah. And
sentient life.
And I guess, like, I'm wondering, like, if you were an admiral and you had a problem and then you asked Control what to do, and Control's like, well, you should do this. Like, how often, if ever, would you go like, nah? You know what I mean?
Well, it depends on the decision.
I'm just thinking, like, in a general sense, just the general things that admirals usually deal with. I don't know. It's a very weird thing. I'm not saying that it's bad or anything like that. If anything, it's like such a bizarre, in a sense, such a bizarre sci-fi concept that it really sort of...
It's not that bizarre. We're already doing it.
Well, I mean, we are already doing it, but it's like taking out the human element, right? I mean, that's like what it's doing. And it's
no,
like,
I mean, like, it's not taking it out. It's like you're saying, like, when... I mean, we've been doing this already for a long time with our search algorithms, like, and our like marketing and YouTube and everything. It's all like algorithm driven, and we've done it like willingly, and it's been very successful because like the engine that it's operating on is like internally consistent. Like, it's driving for activity, it's driving for clicks, it's driving for interest, and it turns out that like our search algorithms are like outrage magnets, and we're very interested in things that provoke reaction. We're not really interested in things that provoke calmness and detachment, which is why like yoga is not very popular on YouTube. But like it's why like I I frequently use Google trying to eliminate as many like markers that it can use, so that it like doesn't know who I am, so that I can see something close to an objective search result. But I know that that's futile because it's using so many other factors that I can't control.
Yeah, right. But that, I mean, this is obviously like on another level entirely, right? To the point.
Not really. It's the same thing. You're letting a machine take over, and there's no way to avoid it. It's already happened. We can't stop doing it.
I guess to some extent, that's actually, it reminds me of a thing. I took this forensics class in high school, and it was taught by like the lead forensics investigator, like not investigator, but like lab guy in the state or something. Anyway, he was talking about like when the fingerprint databases first started popping up, they would like get someone's fingerprints, put them into the system, and then be like, oh, it was this guy, right? That's the number one result. So then they would go and arrest that guy. And the guy was like, I was in Cleveland at the time, what the heck? And what they found was that, the users were just basically saying like, oh, well, I thought this thing was flawless, and whatever the number one result was would be the person whose fingerprints it were. Whereas the computer was saying like, I only have X amount of fingerprints, and this is the closest match. But that doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination that it could be someone who isn't in the system. So my point being, I guess there is that need for that human element. Yeah, I guess there is the need for the human element. I guess I was just thinking of it being, so advanced that you say like, computer, here's my problem, right?
Yeah.
Taking it back to the Moneyball analogy, it's like, do I start Mark Burley or do I start Jose Contreras? Jose Contreras is the hot hand, but Burley's been consistent all year long. Who's best to start in game one of the World Series? And then
oh my God,
the AI is like, Contreras. And you're
the AI is like, I am already bored. Can we talk about Space Wars?
Okay, I'm just saying, Anyway.
Yeah, I feel like if an AI told me to do something, I would be like, okay, why? Explain to me why.
And I guess maybe that's the thing, right? I guess that's it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, do you want to like tell
argument,
the AI, do you want to be like, your reasoning is dumb, AI?
I would absolutely tell an AI that it was dumb.
Well, what's the movie I'm thinking of where they do that and then the AI is like, oh yeah, and kills everybody? There's a movie that does that.
There's a movie where somebody says that an AI is dumb and the AI goes, oh yeah?
And kills them.
And then it kills everyone?
Yes, that's word for word what happens. I
don't know. Are you thinking of Runaway or Chopping Mall?
No. But
these are real movies.
I believe it, but I haven't seen either of them. So.
I like to think of war games where they say, hey, AI, you're dumb. And it goes, what? And they're like, all right, here, play tic-tac-toe. And it does. And it's like, yo, dogs, this was on me. My bad. I was being dumb.
I haven't seen war
I'm going to
games,
stop.
But
you haven't seen war games?
No, I know.
Get into it.
I know. All right. Anyway. Okay, so here's the scene where they're trying to come up with a way to not open up that door and yet also not let Ariam do what she's doing against her will.
I like this moment for for complicated reasons. One is that through the entirety of season 1, Michael Burnham kept doing illogical things, and she kept saying like I was raised in the Vulcan culture of logic, and I'm like, you are terrible at that. and when it comes to this, they're like, this is what you have to do. Like, this is the right and smart thing to do. It's awful, but it's the logical move, and she can't. And then somebody else comes in and saves the day for her, and she's like, oh my god, she's got. I mean, like, you think going into the next episode, she's got to go up to Spock and be like, you know what, I am not good at being a Vulcan. Mm-hmm. You are kind of nailing it, bro.
And maybe that's what will happen. You know, I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting thing, I guess. In like the very first episode, we talked about how I believe this character's name is Nan. Is that right? How she had like a red spacesuit which matched her red uniform, and I think it was you who said like, "Oh well, you know, they just made those right there, so they custom made them to whatever, you know, her uniform should be, you know, which is red." So that made sense to me. But now that she's on Discovery and her uniform is not red, how come her spacesuit is still red? Shouldn't she have a new, or were they just like, you already made one, you don't get another one?
Well, I didn't assume that it was just made. I think that it can just make like clothes and equipment and stuff, but I think that like primarily when they like go to get like a spacesuit or a uniform, like they go to the computer and say, yeah, bring me a spacesuit, like bring me my spacesuit, bring me my uniform. Mm-hmm. Like I put it in the machine a week ago after our last mission because there were a whole bunch of different colored blood stains on it because we were in a battle with a lot of different aliens. I need it now. It's clean, right? And the computer goes, yeah, it's totally clean. I got everything out, except for the wine that's still there. Here it is. So I don't think it's like made new and then recycled every time. I think that it's a thing. You put it in, you get it back.
I don't know. I think they would have updated the color as well, but that's just me.
Why would the color update? It's still a good suit.
She posted a thing, the actress who plays Nan, she posted a thing on Twitter a few weeks ago with her wearing a red shirt, like this must be like an officially licensed shirt, and says red shirt, I might not make it. It's cool. It's good.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's like, but you know, we know now because Star Trek has the term red shirt, we know that the person in the red shirt is probably the one who will survive.
Yeah, I know, but it's just kind of a funny thing for an actor to put. It doesn't matter. Anyway. All right. So there we have that episode.
The joke has to evolve with the
okay. So there we have that episode, and yes, it's called Project Daedalus. For people who don't know, Daedalus was Icarus's dad, and
yeah, you know Icarus.
He built those wings for him, those wax wings that he flew too close to the sun with and melted.
No, this isn't a reference to Daedalus and Icarus. This is a reference to Daedelus's creation of the Minoan labyrinth.
Why do you say that?
Because they created a labyrinth. Like, there's a labyrinth of minds. Daedalus created the labyrinth that they navigate to get to the Minotaur, which is the AI.
You don't think that it might also have something to do with the Red Angel and the wings and everything?
No, I think that is tangential and unrelated. Okay. I think that this is primarily about Daedelus's creation of the Minoan labyrinth.
All right. Okay. He was rather prolific, wasn't he? I heard he also created like sails, like on sailboats and stuff.
I don't think he invented them.
I mean, that's what Wikipedia said.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
And
I don't remember
he's
that part.
he's also the guy who invented carpentry.
No.
That's what Wikipedia says.
Look, this fictional character from Greek mythology is definitely 100% not responsible for the invention of using wood to make objects.
Okay.
I disagree.
If you
This
say
character
so.
that didn't exist did not create the technology of making things out of wood. That's crazy.
I mean,
I take issue with that part of this story that involves monsters.
okay. Fair enough. Anyway, I mean, it just says, it says it right here. It says,
I don't know. Look, here's the thing. Look, to me, this is very clearly about the creation of the monster and the labyrinth. This is about the labyrinth. And this episode is a navigation through a labyrinth and facing a monster. Like, that's what it is.
okay, but I'm just saying right here, such anecdotal details as these were embroideries upon the reputation of Daedalus as an innovator in many arts. He is credited with inventing carpentry, and with it the saw, axe, plumb line, drill, glue, and isinglass. I don't even know what that is, but whatever. So there you go. He invented carpentry.
Sure. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
He's like, we got all these trees, guys. Why do we keep making stuff out of stones? Guys, am I right? And his son's like, you're right, Dad. He's like, this kid gets it.
Oh, God.
Coming soon, my version of all of Greek mythology. It's gonna be really chill and laid back.
Be sure to check out our Discovery coverage throughout the week. There's Live from the Edge with Bruce and Brandy. There's Postcards from the Edge with Amy. There's the main show with Patrick. And then there's Notes from the Edge with Chris. And then, of course, there's us doing Tracks from the Edge. You'll find all of these in the main feed for The Edge and in the Trek FM master feed. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Discovery, and the best place to do that is the Babel Conference, which is our listeners group on Facebook, where Amy Nelson will collect your feedback for Postcards from the Edge. You can find us on Twitter at TrekFM or send us an email using the contact form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Just choose to send to a show and choose The Edge. We'd like to thank our associate producers, Norman C. Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoaib Mirza, Richard Rutledge, James Muldrow, Cornelia Reutner, Ryan Malett, Brian Maloche, and Chris Tribuzio. Thank you very much, everybody. If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows going and even become an associate producer yourself, visit patreon.com/trekfm for all the details. I didn't come up with a track thing this week.
What? You do every week. Oh, no, wait. It's the other way around. That's right.
Let me Google track.
Every week you say, I didn't come up with a track pun this week.
Let me Google,
as though it's somehow a change of pace.
I'm gonna Google track puns and let the AI come up with something for us. Even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. Will Rogers. That doesn't really work at all, does it?
Nope. Let's go with it.